Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 16th day of October, 2019. Well, I remember to do the pendulum on Monday night, so I didn't do it for this, but I'm going to hold my arm a little more steady here. It always seems like when I look at this, it seems like my arm's moving, but it's really not. I think it's more of an illusion. So I'm going to hold this back to me. We're going to let it come to a rest, sort of. So is Donald Trump going to be impeached by the House? Yes. Is the Senate going to vote to impeach him, though? He be out of office by the end of the year? No. Okay, this is new. I have always consistently, and this happened the same thing happened Monday night. Um, I have been consistently getting that the Senate would impeach him, or not the Senate, but the House would impeach him. So it's going yes. I will tell you, Monday night when I did this, the pendulum was swinging so violently. I've never seen it swing that violently. Um, in the past, I would get yes for the House and then no for the Senate, that the Senate would not vote to do this. Monday night, and just now, it's the first time, at least as of now, this week, as of Monday to now, where the Senate is also going to do that. That's the first time. It doesn't look like that process will occur before the end of the year. So if it happens, if this actually does happen, I'm always hesitant on pendulum work to believe things in terms of too far ahead in the future because so many variables exist in life. We can make so many different choices that maybe something just opens up and you go in a direction you would never ever think you would. So I don't like to look at pendulum work as carved in stone, but as what the current energies are as of this moment. And so as of this moment, things have changed. Now, I would venture to guess it's the information that's coming out from people that are testifying. Um, so I would guess that, it's just the natural flow of things. But on the other hand, you just never know. So I'm not going to say for certain that's what's going to happen. I'm just going to say that suddenly I have a change in what the pendulum is doing, and it's something I haven't seen before. So we'll just say that. So just keep it in mind. Yes, but not this year. So, and maybe that's for the best, but I'm sure that the Kurdish people don't think so. So in any event, let's go ahead and look at the astrological information for today. We're still in self-sufficient Taurus, but now we've moved into from the sixth house to the seventh house of marriage. This is as of 9:16 this morning, my time, which I guess I think I mentioned this maybe yesterday. Oregon has decided to not, spring forward and fall back. We're just going to pick one. And I guess we're picking the fall back because the first of the year, we're going to solidify that. And that's all we're going to be. We will have fallen back and that's it. We're never going to spring forward ever again. So anyhow, my husband mentioned that to me last night. He saw an article alerting us again as to when this is happening. So January 1st, I guess it goes into effect. So now our body clocks don't have to be confused for an hour twice a year. So anyhow. But anyway, I'll go back to this. Anyhow, the moon is in Taurus in the seventh house of marriage, suggesting a focus on family and home as a means of your own stability. You feel really stable in your home when the moon is in Taurus in the 7th house. Partnerships, your primary partnerships, your families, what's most important to you. Uranus also is still in the 6th house. Again, you know, unexpected health issue maybe. If you're not feeling well, check in with somebody, with yourself at least, and see what's going on there. The North Node in the 8th house in Cancer. The North and South nodes, they sort of switch from time to time. The North is usually in the 8th or the 9th house. It seems to be really where it seems to want to hover. Right now it's all in Cancer. But what it's asking us to do is to maybe overcome some inner pride and, you know, accepting failure. You know, when we fail at things, sometimes that's tough, isn't it? I don't know that it's easy for anyone to cope with when we've screwed up or failed somehow. We just, you know, but some of us take it farther than it needs to go. And somehow it becomes our reality. Instead of just failing in that circumstance, we're failures. Well, no, you know, we're not. So anyhow, it's asking us to learn to accept failure and learn a little bit of self-control and maybe have a better focus on spiritual values instead of, you know, the ego. You know, because the ego is going to be what's going to influence that whole ability to accept, you know, when things don't go right. You know, if your ego's out of control, then, you know, it's really tough to get past that. Failure becomes a real issue. Mars is still in Libra. Watch your tone again. Let the group decide if you're going to be its leader, not you. So, one thing that's sort of aligning with that is Chiron and Aries. Chiron, of course, is the wounded healer. And right now in Aries, it's sort of going to lend. It's going to create feelings maybe of feeling violated by others, and it might sort of keep us from wanting to assert ourselves, you know. But you know, Mars, on the other hand, may like overcompensate for it and try to be pushy anyway. So again, be careful there. Black Moon Lilith is still in the 4th house. Pisces in the 4th house, and so, you know, avoid some self-defeating behavior. Don't be blaming other people for your own stuff. Venus is still in Scorpio, so intensity in relationships. Mercury has moved, still in Scorpio, but in the 1st house now. So, you know, again, a more independent focus. And so, again, with Mars in Libra as well, there's that risk of maybe being a little pushy with your own beliefs and attitudes and whatnot. Neptune is still in the 4th house, still fostering an unrealistic view of family. So you might have a little, there might be a little bit at odds with Taurus in the 7th house. So, and lastly, Saturn and Capricorn in the 2nd house suggests a conservative approach to money. So if you're feeling like, oh, I don't want to spend anything today, just, you know, do that, because maybe there's a reason. Maybe something's going to come up later on, and you're going to be happy that you didn't, you know, go out on some kind of a shopping spree here today that of stuff you actually didn't need. Maybe there's something coming up for you that you don't realize and unexpected, where you're going to be glad you had that money. So be a little conservative today with how you spend money. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a storm brewing here on the high desert today. It's extraordinarily windy. Trees woke me up scraping on the roof of my house. So it's good. I looked outside. I thought, oh, geez. It's coming from the south, too. So hopefully it'll be warmer, but I don't know. We'll see. Usually south wind is a little bit warmer, but not always. But when it comes from the north, then, you know, you're coming from Portland area and over Mount Hood. And, you know, you've got the whole Cascade Mountain range that's got to come across and when it hits us, and unfortunately that doesn't always portend good weather. So anyhow, let's go ahead and get started and take our first card and see what we have for today. We're going to do 3 cards again and look at them and decide if we need a 4th, and then we're going to do a rune, and then we're going to create a geomancy rune. So if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you so much for coming by. It's getting a little bit warm here amongst the candles, so I'm going to fan a little bit as the hot flash happens. Anyhow, crone issues. Don't fear them. Embrace them. because really, what choice do you have? You know, you are what you are when you're this age. So we start out with the Nine of Cups, so positive here. Nine is about completion, about endings, fulfillment. Here we have a gentleman who's feeling quite emotionally fulfilled. Let's do another card. Whoops. 10, 11, 12, 13. I almost dropped that one. And I take the 13th card if you haven't been here before. I do that simply for randomness sake. I was born on the 13th of October, so 13 has always just figured prominently in my life. Things happen in 13s for me. So if I need to do something randomly with the tarot, I take the 13th card. So we have the King of Wands. And if you've been here before, you know kings and the Emperor are not my favorite people. Especially the King of Wands. He's a little bit too arrogant for my taste. Let's do the last card. Let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, we have the Ace of Cups. We might move some things around here, maybe. Well, let's just start out the way they are. Right now, we have a 1 energy of new beginnings. Today's energy, of course, is a 7, being the 16th. So you're talking, you know, balance and partnership and magic, divinity, balance. Did I say balance already? Maybe I already said that. Think scales when you think the 7. Think the resting point. If you visualize the scales in the 7, you've got 3 and 3 and 1, and so that center point is the resting point. So you kind of have that energetic momentum today to bring everything into balance and to find your resting point within. But here we have the energy of new beginnings with a 1 energy here. I'm going to move the Ace to the beginning. We'll have the King in the center, though. No. Let's start out with the King. Okay, I'm going to start out with the King. So we've got a guy who is doesn't look us in the eye, obviously. We see the Ouroboros on his, the 3 of them, surrounding the lion on the back of his throne. Looks like there's another lion down here as well. Excuse me. He's holding his staff in his right hand of power. Nothing is in his left hand. We see his little salamander down here. That's a fire elemental, if you will. Wands is about the fire element and our will and our creativity, manifestation. He's concerned with the past. He's worried about the past. His focus is on the past. Past behavior, past activities. He has to watch his back all of the time. He can be dynamic, any king can. He can be benevolent, any king can. But typically, unless you are, the kings are typically more about themselves. They're not as benevolent. In other words, if they're benevolent, it's because it serves their purpose. So I always have a real negative slant on the kings. I feel that they symbolize patriarchy, and we know where that's gotten us, which is absolutely nowhere. But then we have the beginnings of new emotional, Cups is about our emotions. It's the water element. And so here we have new emotions spilling forth. Everything is in balance. You see 5 streams of water coming forth, representing the pentagram, or all elements in spirit. We see the dove of peace dropping a disc in the center, likely, you know, about to create more spilling forth, but you're looking at all planes in balance. You're looking at the vertical plane of existence, as above, so below, spirit focusing into form, and then you're also looking at the horizontal level of polarity once you get here, basically. And in the center, theoretically, is where we should be. All things in balance. We see the water spilling forth into a body of water with lots of lily pads. Some lilies starting to spring up there. And if I'm not mistaken, and I don't have my magnifying glass here, so I'm not sure where that is, it looks kind of like they're purple. So that tends to, it's like a light purple maybe? And so that would again be of spirit, infusing our emotions, basically. The water element's about our intuition. Uh, you could say that the king has turned his back on us and he's more consumed with his own thing. So if this is a man, or it could even be a woman, with more masculine type of Mars type of energy within. Um, Gender's just a vehicle here. It's not anything that's carved in stone. We can express the horizontal plane is the gender polarity. Within it's how receptive you are, how projective you are. Now we tend to align that with masculine and feminine being the receptive side and masculine being the projective side. So, it depending on the continuum maybe that we fall on, maybe we're too receptive and we don't stand up for ourselves, or maybe we're too aggressive. The masculine side or the projective side is just too much. But basically, that's what we're talking about here. And the king has just basically turned his back on us. He is not interested in whatever is happening, but there is a new groundswell of emotional resonance building for us. Maybe whatever he's doing is causing us so much heartache that we're having to come to a new understanding, a new type of perspective, one that we are, of course, are going to use our intuition to create, leading us to a better place of emotional fulfillment. When he's not looking you in the eye, there could be some deception at work. And so I think that eventually, when a person in authority is doing things that is causing harm, okay, that's stuff's going on behind your back, so let's just put this in terms of a family, okay, since we have family issues here today, and since the moon is in Taurus in the 7th house, let's talk about this in terms of just the immediate family. Perhaps you have a person in authority, or a person who's taking the reins from everybody else, who's doing his own thing. He's not paying attention to anything that's going on. I'm just going to say he, because we're talking about the king. So it's just easier. It could apply to a woman. It could also apply to a child as well. If you have a child that's incredibly willful, that seems to control the room, essentially, and control the family, it could be something like that. But the bottom line is, whoever this is in your life, they're in their own world. If it's you, you're in your own world. You're not paying attention to anybody else, just you. You're concerned with your own issues, and everyone else has taken a back seat to the point you're not even aware of it. Maybe everybody else is just a means to your end. But now we have the Ace of Cups. So something new is on the horizon. Spirit is informing this entire thing. And we're finding that our intuition is coming into play, and we're being able to understand at this point what's really going on with this person. And at the end of the day, you have to leave them to themselves. And you have to start a new way forward, a new direction, a new emotional direction. We don't feel safe right now, perhaps, with this person. And perhaps, the emotional resonance of the house is just, we can't get through to them. They don't pay any attention to us. Everybody's upset, but eventually a decision has to be made, right? Where you have to come to some kind of balance emotionally to where you can see clearly what's actually going on. Now, I'm going to do a 4th card because I think we're missing something. There has to be somewhere, something has to happen, in other words. There has to be a catalyst. So we'll either find it with a card, or we're going to find it with one of the runes. But I think there's got to be something in between the Ace and the 9, because in a sense you have beginnings and endings here. So, if we begin with a different type of emotional presence, then it may lead us. This one may lead us to emotional fulfillment. So maybe we're going to pass. So maybe we don't need a 4th card, but let's do one anyway and see if it, in fact, would go between the two of these, just to give us another step in this whole story. Oh, yeah, okay. That's what we needed. We have the Six of Swords. So we have a change in direction. This depicts a winter scene. So a sense of endings and beginnings because they're headed towards something. Likely a young family, mom and the child are huddled against the elements. All their plans are sitting in front of them, pointing down. With the swords is the air element, our intellect, our reason, decisions, choices, balance. Six is higher self energies, though. So higher self is promoting this. Higher self is pushing us in a new direction. One toward emotional fulfillment. And what do we have here today? This is actually a 16 energy aligning with the 16 energy today, which reduces to 7. So we have, again, coming to a resting point with our emotions, gaining some clarity with them, perhaps making a decision to move in another direction toward emotional fulfillment, which means we leave this guy to himself and let whatever natural consequences coming his way, happen. So if this is in a family situation, then essentially we're going to go in another direction, and whoever the king was representing is going to have to get on board or going to have to leave. So emotionally, or if it's not that he has to leave, it's that the behavior he's engaging in is going to have to end in order for him to achieve fulfillment as well. The king isolates himself, and so there may be somebody in your household who creates a big effect, whether it's authority or what have you. Like I say, you could have a child who is so willful that they control the whole family. And if you don't get a handle on it, and change directions here, then he's going to be an island unto himself, that child. He's going to learn a lot of negative behavior in order to get what he wants, and that's not going to do well for him growing up, and especially when he becomes an adult and tries to have his own family. So, if this is talking about a child in your family that's just incredibly willful, well, you all need to come together and take another tactic here, go in another direction with this person. I'll use is the rune. And so again, it's the 15th rune of the Elder Futhark. Again, 6 energy, higher self coming in. You're seeing air, fire, and water influencing earth. You see, and I'll draw this out for you, runes, as I've said before, are not simply a single energy. They get, especially, unless you're talking about Isa, something that's a simple one, and then that's one energy. But here's Alyes. Ignore that little thing down there at the bottom. My pen didn't work. But we have Isa. We see Isa there. So alignment and source presence, alignment and spirit. We see Kenaz as a vessel, a vortex of spirit, of basically focusing in. But what it's doing, see, is it's focusing in on this part here. See, so you have air, fire, water, and earth essentially depicted in Alyes. Alyes is thought to be the bridge to higher consciousness. It's literally all spiritual energies focusing in to create matter. But it shows you that it's more heavily weighted, that we should be more heavily weighted on that type of experience, feeling the spirit within, feeling that we are source presence, that we are the creator focused into form, and that we have that power to manifest. In fact, it's the only way that we manifest. We may feel cut off from spirit. We may not feel spirit resonate within. We may feel just the manifested form, but make no mistake about it, the manifested form only happens because spirit is focusing in at every given second that we exist to create that. It slows its energy down into that pinpoint of the body, essentially. the pinpoint of the universe, the focused density of the universe and everything contained within it. And so you have that sense of the vortex of energy coming down to that manifestation point when you see Alyes. And so the aces, on the other hand, are also the resonant power of, I mean, we think it's the major arcana, but it's likely not, at least not when we get into form. When we get into form, the aces drive the whole thing, because they're the beginnings, they're the fool of the minor arcana in elemental form, right? Broken down into elemental form, whereas the fool is undeveloped potential, so are the aces. It could go anywhere, and then from there, 2 through 10 is describing, how all of that can manifest in our manifested life in the body, essentially. Let's look at the geomancy rune for today. Well, we have Populus, and I'll draw that out for you. Populus is an entirely passive experience. We have Vaya as its complement, which is all of single dots. Populus, on the other hand, is all dual dots. And so you're looking at passive influence. And it's about going with the flow. Populus means the crowd, whereas Vaya, its complement, means the way. So there you can see where we're just going to be passive here and go with the flow. Whereas with Vaya, its complement, if you only had one of them, then you would be, carving a new direction in a sense. The 6, even though they're going on a new direction here, in a sense, they're going with the flow, aren't they? They've made the decision, and they're letting that decision take them, the flow of that decision, take them into a new life, into new experiences, into emotional fulfillment. But here, if we're talking about dealing with someone willful, which irrespective of whether or not this is personal or it's what the country's contending with right now, which we're dealing with someone willful who should not be there, we have some other information that's coming in, perhaps some other kinds of facts that are coming into play that are leading us into a better direction of understanding and awakening and, yes, compassion for everyone involved, including people that maybe support this individual. Tough thing to do, given the dynamic involved of the king. Given, maybe if this is a family, maybe you've got, certain members of the family that are really if this is a willful child, for example, like we've been talking about here, maybe you've got certain members of the family, maybe mom is just can't, assert herself and establish boundaries with that willful child. So maybe mom is enabling it. And so you can see where enabling and all of that, whether it's, on a personal level or on a countrywide level, society level, maybe this is a boss in your life. Maybe it's your employer who's just completely out of control. And everybody's got to figure out how to deal with this person, And instead of having a united front, which basically we're talking about here, based on some reason, because we've got both the ace and the 9, so you've got beginnings and endings. The 10 would be full completion and moving on into something new. It's that pivot point. The 10 is really, as I see it anyway. But basically this is what you have here. So and what's cool is that it's in synchronicity with today's numerology as well. So whereas it portends a different direction that we're going to take, it needs to be one that we do in unity when we talk Populus. So does this relate to the pendulum thing we did in the very beginning? Maybe. Maybe we're going to be in unison about what to do with, what's his name, ultimately. Sometimes the facts and the evidence are just so much that, and in this case, I think that's what's going to happen. The facts are so big. There's just so much. It's not what did he do, it's what didn't he do. And when you get to that level with somebody, we're going to have to come together on this, no matter if it's reluctant, no matter if it just kills you to do it. if this is about what's going on, I think that it's pretty clear to see at this point that this guy has such a lack of impulse control. He knows absolutely nothing. He doesn't know how to lead. He doesn't know how to govern. It's not in his wheelhouse. He doesn't even know how. Whatever people thought of him as a CEO, it isn't true. None of it. And so consequently, the faith that people put in him has been misplaced. But in fairness, you see, the branding that he did, that he had people helping him with, was so dynamic and so good that it really looked like this is who he was. So we can be upset with people for voting for him, but the truth of the matter is, yeah, it spoke to some, nefarious things maybe within some of us, the racism, the sexism, this volatility that makes this just frightening, that seems to have lent itself to people dying already. So, but we've gotten so numb to it. That's the other thing. And I think that what we're talking about here is we get going in our lives and we get numb to what's really going on. We get used to it. So if there's abuse going on in the house, if there's, whatever's going on, we get numb to it. And we don't necessarily react the way we should. We get too accustomed to it. You get too accustomed. That's the downside of populists. We get too accustomed. I'll hold it up closer. We get too accustomed to going with that flow. And we forget that, wait a minute, we do have other choices here. We can see things differently. We can take another direction here. And so I think that that's what the reading is trying to tell us, that if there's something like that going on in our lives, we need to stay vigilant. We need to maintain a better focus, one that's more balanced, one that's not so much caught up into the reaction of the moment, but one that maybe achieves the resting point of the 7 energy and allows us to come to a rest where we can then see with better clarity what's really going on here. If we're talking about a family situation here where the king is actually representing a willful child, you owe it to that child, right? To guide them in a better direction emotionally so that they're not so willful, right? But if this is about, something that's more adult oriented in our lives, and we're talking about an adult in the family, well, their focus isn't right. Their focus isn't on the family. And it needs to be, we have our responsibilities. We were talking about this yesterday. We have our responsibilities, but we still need to figure out a balance here. We had a nice little yod that we did with the 3-card spread where we're talking about, the balance that we create between play and responsibility. Well, here, I think that we've taken our responsibilities into another direction here. And our awareness and our compassion and our intuition and our emotions, all of that have to inform us now. And all Yis is saying is needs to come from spirit. It needs to be spirit-based in terms of how we deal with whatever this King of Wands represents in our lives, whether it's, again, something within our family, maybe it's a unreasonable coworker or boss, or maybe it's the guy in the Oval Office right now. Whichever this is, clearly we are at odds with an energy that's out of control, wherever it's happening. So anyhow, I guess that's it for today. I think we've done enough damage here, and so we'll come back tomorrow and do a little more. So thank you so much for coming by. Do check out my blog over at imsteppingaside.com. It's called Stepping Aside. Correspondences are up. I have not done today's yet, so I will do that momentarily and put those up. So you can see some astrological correspondences for the day. The weekly Rune and Moon went up on Sunday, so you can check that out. We still have a few more days in the week. Interesting thing about that one is we had a Norn influence. All 3 Norn runes are appearing this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'm not sure, was today Hagalaz? I'm not sure. I'll have to look. But when you have the Norns come into play, clearly it's like the divine feminine, the goddess presence, has to come in and realign things and reestablish things and get people to understand that, again, that we're beings of spirit, that we're not, these egoic bodies that we all inhabit, and so consequently, I think that again, we're looking at some really serious energy this week of where we can we can allow spirit to inform what our choices, our direction, our mood, everything about us, which it should be anyway. It's just they're just drawing our attention to that. You've got Nathes, which is the friction within. You've got Hagalas, which is destruction and preparation for change, and then you've got Isa, which is alignment and source presence. So you can see those things that are happening this week, to the point that I think it results in a new direction, a new commitment, a new way forward, and I believe that it is a unifying one. So it's funny though, when truth comes out, when everybody knows what's going on, it's like suddenly you can go, oh, okay, now what do we do? And suddenly it's not what I do, but what do we do? All right. It just sort of goes that way, doesn't it? So anyhow, I guess that's it. I said that once before and then I kept talking. So anyhow, be good to yourself. Be good to one another. Thank you so much again for coming by. Click subscribe. I loved you to do that. And blessed be.